G'day, and welcome to the AOS Coach sneak peek into Season 2 of the Generals Handbook 2022 to 2023. Games Workshop did send me a copy of this book in advance of store release, but they're not going to see this video before it goes live. Now, within this video, I am going to highlight the Season's Battle Pack that includes new Realm rules, 3 new core battalions, 3 new grand strategies, and 4 new battle tactics. You'll also get a few pages focused around Galletian Champions, which is the theme of this particular General's Handbook. You'll also receive War Scrolls for the Universal Endless Spells and 12 battle plans, with 6 of them being new. So without further ado, let's go explore the splintered lands of Gallet. This General's Handbook continues to be set in the realm of Gur in the region of Gallet. Some things will remain consistent between Season 1 and Season 2, but this book is no straight copy pasta. The Gaze of Gur realm spell is gone. The realm command nobody used in the history of time and space is gone. The Galletian Veterans keyword is gone, so is Bounty Hunters and Expert Conquerors battalions. The player who goes second in the battle round no longer gets to choose which objective is a proving ground, and the Bonds of Battle special rule is technically gone from the battle pack, but there is a new battalion that will let you access the rules. More to that later. The focus of Season 2 switches from your battle line troops to more around your sub-commander heroes, which will be known as Galletian Champions, but not every sub-commander is going to be a Galletian Champion. We'll explain it a little bit more later. This isn't like Season 1 where the incentives were focused towards infantry, but a certain bounty hunter battalion outweighed the benefits of running them. There is serious benefit in Season 2 focused around the champions, so you'll want to remember this term. The realm spell that all wizards know in this season is Grinding Teeth of Gallet. Now, it has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12. If successfully cast, you get to pick one objective within range and visible to the caster, then roll the dice for each unit within 6 inches of that objective. On a 4-up, that unit's going to suffer d6 mortal wounds. Now, notice that it doesn't say enemy units, it just says each unit. This is going to be a great way to dish out some damage and claim or retain an objective. It's also going to deal mortal wounds to your own enemies, so use this spell wisely. Grinding Teeth of Gallet may not be the first spell you choose to cast, but it will be good in situations. This spell will combine nicely with any way that you can extend a spell range, things like Umbral Spell Portal, the Sylvanus Spell Slinger, or the Seraphon Astrolith Bearer. The Realm command is No Retreat, No Surrender, and this can be issued in addition to any other commands available. Now, you can use this command at the start of the combat phase, and the unit that receives the command must be a friendly unit that's not a hero or a monster, that did not charge in this same turn, and is within 3 inches of an enemy unit. That unit cannot make a pile-in move in that phase, but you do get to add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by that unit until the end of the phase. Now, that does exclude any mounts if they happen to have a mount. So this command ability can be used in both players' turns, and essentially is trading the ability to make a 3-inch pile-in for +1 attack, so long as you didn't make the charge move in this turn. As long as you're not roared at, this is going to be a great way to grind out a durable unit that's sitting on an objective, or perhaps to embrace an opponent who's charging you. Because you're unable to pile in when using this command ability, if you think you're going to use this often, you may want to consider the Bonds of Battle battalion that's coming up soon to help you make the most of the attacking models in this unit. It is competing with all-out attack and all-out defense in the combat phase, so do think about what your unit best benefits from. Is it going to be +1 to hit? Is it going to be +1 attack? Or is it going to be +1 to your save? Now, probably in most cases, the +1 attack is going to be better than +1 to hit, but again, look at your profile and work out what's best for you. Earlier, I told you to remember the term Galletian Champion because it's about to become an important element to your list design, the way you interact with battle plans, and they're a solid incentive to use them. Heroes with a wounds characteristic of 10 or less, you may know as a sub-commander, but also does not have a mount and are not unique, are going to gain the keyword Galletian Champion. So who are some possible Galletian champions? Your Lord Relictor, your Savage Big Boss, the Lord of Plagues, your Cities of Sigmar Assassins, your Master Molder, your Arcanaut Admirals, your Abhorred Archregents, your Vampire Lord, your Wargog Prophet, your Law Seeker, your Achillean Thrall Master, your Ogre Tyrant, the Krulgas Cruciator, the Warsong Revenant, the Arslan Star Master, and a Mega Boss, is just to name a few of the different Galletian champions. I'm sure you're about to have a ball looking through your battle tome to see who is a Galletian champion. And if you don't know where to find if it's unique, look at the back where there's points and, you know, rolls and different things. You'll see if it says unique. Normally they're just named characters. Now, it's worth calling out that there is likely an FAQ coming in regards to heroes that have a companion. Prime example would be your Idoneth Deepkin heroes that all have fishies on their profile. Now, according to the current rules, your companions count as a mount. That's core rule 22.3.1. But there has been early indications by Warhammer community that this will get overruled. So at the point of recording, anyone that has a companion is treated as a mount, which means that they're technically not a Galletian champion. However, it sounds like it's going to be changed, so stay tuned. So what benefits do I get for running my Galletian champions? Well, the first one is going to be the keys to victory, and this is a potential game changer for your small wound heroes that are traditionally easy to snipe off the board. I'm looking at you, Necromancer, who dies so easily despite being next to 60 zombies. So friendly Galletian champions cannot be picked as a target for attacks made by missile weapons while they're within 1 inch of a friendly battle line unit. So this will be a balancing act when you're running your unit and making sure that, you know, your Galletian champion is still within 1 inch. It's going to make it a balancing act on how you remove your slain models to ensure that you're within 1 inch of the friendly battle line. But there is a battalion as well that can kind of counteract this. So stay tuned, we'll get into that soon. Finally, in the special rules department, you have the desperate action. If you're taking second in the current battle round, at the start of your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Galletian champion on the battlefield to carry out 2 different heroic actions in that phase instead of the one. So you could use Heroic Recovery and Finest Hour in the same turn, and some factions have access to additional heroic actions like your Slaves to Darkness Demon Prince, which you could rotate within your 2 options. But if only there was more for the average Joe. Well, there is. There are 2 additional heroic actions in this season for your Galletian champions. One is Strike at the Opening and the other is Lead by Example. Strike at the Opening lets you pick one friendly Galletian champion that is within 3 inches of an enemy. That hero can fight if it hasn't already fought in that phase. However, the hero cannot fight again in the same phase, and the strike last effect applies to the hero until the end of the turn. Very few units can actually fight in the hero phase, but you couldn't try to double fight in the hero phase using Little Morathi's command ability, for example. In the combat phase, you will have the strike last effect applied this turn. However, fighting in the hero phase will mean that your opponent can't use all-out defense. If you're able to slay the unit that you're in combat with, your hero is going to be free to move around, to shoot, to charge, because they're no longer locked into combat. The other heroic action is Lead by Example, which lets you pick one friendly Galletian champion that has a sworn bodyguard. We'll get to that when we get to battalions, and has just carried out the Strike at the Opening heroic action, the one we just talked about. If that sworn bodyguard unit is wholly within 6 inches of the Galletian champion and within 3 inches of an enemy unit, that sworn bodyguard unit can fight if they haven't already fought in that phase. However, that unit cannot fight again in that phase, the hero phase, and the strike last effect also applies to them until the end of the turn. So you'll learn in a moment that there is a battalion that lets you pick a unit to become a sworn bodyguard to a specific hero that's placed in the battalion. An example of this might be your Vampire Lord on foot that also has a unit of Graveguard in the army, and you've tied them both together within the Sworn Bodyguard battalion. Now, with your 2 heroic actions, if you went second in the battle round, or if you happen to be playing in the new battle plan Path of the Champion, you could have both the Vampire Lord and the Graveguard fighting in the hero phase, assuming you've met those previously discussed conditions. Now, this could be a little bit more impactful than trying to generate a command point on a 4-up, and obviously you have to be within combat in the hero phase. But wait, there is more. Your Galletian champions have access to some extra artifacts. The first one being the Tusk Helm, and after the bearer makes a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of the bearer. If you do so, roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified charge roll for the charge move. For each 4+, that target suffers 1 mortal wound. If the bearer already has an ability that has an effect that is triggered after it makes a charge move, you must pick which effect applies. You can't use both. So for example, your Ogre Tyrant, in Ogres, you get to do this similar type of thing. You couldn't do both the Ogre Mortal Wound charge and use the Tusk Helm. You'd have to pick one or the other. Combat-focused heroes like the Doomseeker, the Vampire Lord, a Vargulf, or a Mega Boss may like this. It might be a nice way to boost up things like your Ogre Tyrants, for example, who would normally do mortal wounds. I think it's on a 6-up. You'd now be doing it on a 4+, and that 4-up is normally reserved for your Beastclaw Raiders without taking the Crushing Bolt command trait. I am a little bit concerned with this artifact in the hands of a Nighthaunt hero because they got the ability to retreat and charge, especially help us all with Scarlet Doom, who's going to have those Bladegeist Revenants doing mortal wounds on the charge. Then they can retreat, then they can charge again. Now you got a hero who can do the same thing. That's a lot of mortal wounds on the charge, rinse and repeat. The second artifact is the Night Flyer Cloak. Now, during deployment, instead of setting up the bearer on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up in ambush as a reserve. Now, at the end of your movement phase, you can set up the bearer on the battlefield within 1 inch of a friendly battle line unit and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This might be useful for your High Gladiatrix, your Krulgas Cruciator, or your Thrallmaster, who offer that area of effect bubble or a debuff. And finally, you got the Griffeather Charm, where the bearer has a ward of 5+. Now, this is pretty obvious where to use this. It's really for anything that you want to protect. Maybe it's your Master Molder and you want to keep it around so you can regenerate Rat Ogres on 3+. Or maybe you want to make an even more annoying Lore Master to deny your opponents of their objectives. Or maybe that critical support hero like a Lord of Relicta that you want on the table for a long time. Next up is your Unique Enhancements, and this is a new feature to the game. You can always take one aspect of the champion enhancement for your army. Each time you take an aspect of the champion enhancement, you can pick one aspect of the champion from the table below and give it to one Galletian champion in your army. If a rule allows you to take an extra enhancement, let's say for example the Warlord Battalion, you could take an extra aspect of the champion enhancement as that extra enhancement. But if you do so, you cannot pick the same aspect of the champion from the table below more than once. The same unit cannot benefit from more than one aspect of the champion. So kind of like artifacts, you can't put multiple artifacts on the single hero. The same is true with your unique enhancements. The first enhancement is Tunnel Master, and once per battle, instead of picking this Galletian champion to make a normal move, you can remove it from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy units. This might be good for a wizard or a priest that you want to reposition up the battlefield, sit them on arcane or mystical terrain, get them in range of a spell cast or a future unbind. It might be a great way to get obviously onto an objective. It might be similar to the Night Flyer Cloak, where you need to reposition your hero to provide your troops with an area of effect buff, or maybe to debuff your opponent. Fueled by Gurish Rage once per battle before you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to this Galletian champion, and that wound or mortal wound would cause this unit to be slain, you can roll a dice. On a 3+, that wound or mortal wound is negated, and you can heal up to D3 wounds allocated to the hero, and any wounds that were currently remaining to be allocated would be negated. So basically, instead of this hero dying on a 3-up, they don't die, they heal D3 wounds, and no more wounds go through them from that sequence. Now, this is going to be useful for anyone that needs that champion to be alive. Maybe it's your general, maybe it has that critical spell or that particular buff, or maybe it's that priest that has the ability to bring on Fire Slayers, for example, to bring on that invocation. You might want to keep it around a little longer. Stubborn as a Rhinox will make this Galletian champion count as 10 models for the purpose of contesting objectives, while there are no enemy Galletian champions contesting the same objective. Pop this on a wizard or a priest or a hero that is protecting your home objective. Perhaps maybe it's a fast moving hero who's moving up the board, like a Vargulf, like a Vampire Lord, like a Demon Prince, that wants to cap an objective up on the board early. Great way to score. The last unique enhancement is the leadership of the Alpha, and once per battle, this Galletian champion can issue one of the following commands up to 3 times in the same phase. They can issue either rally 3 times, all out attack 3 times, all out defense, or redeploy. If it does so, no command point is spent in the second and third time that Galletian champion uses it. So if you use rally 3 times, it's not going to cost you 3 command points, it'll just cost you 1. Now slot this on a hero with a totem keyword, and that is going to extend your range of issuing 3 commands quite significantly. The rally boost will go further on Daughters of Cain, Fire Slayers, and Slaves to Darkness, maybe Gits and Beasts of Chaos, depending on what happens with their new book, because they have improved rallies. So your Daughters of Cain and your Fire Slayers have a 4-up rally build. Slaves to Darkness in one of their sub-factions can rally on a 5-up on particular units. So again, issuing that 3 times could go really far. You could give this to a Carriage on Overlord's hero for 3 all-out attacks in a very aggressive round of shooting. You could drop the spell in the bottle Purple Sun for that extra pew-pew. It could also be nice on a number of combat-focused Fireslayer heroes, or Iden the Deepkin, Thrallmaster, or anything that you might want to benefit to get a bunch of all-out attacks. Next up, we have the 3 core battalions for match play, and as previously mentioned, both the Expert Conquerors and Bounty Hunter battalions are not in this battle pack. Like in previous Generals Handbooks, these core battalions can only be chosen once in your army, but you can still choose the universal battalions like Warlord or Battle Regiment more than once. Now, the 2 icons you need to know are Galletian Champions and Infantry. Infantry is not a keyword, it is a type of unit. We already know the Galletian Champion is a hero, that it has a wounds characteristic of 10 or less, does not have a mount, and isn't unique. Now, an infantry is a unit that has a wounds characteristic of 4 or less, is not a leader, not a behemoth, not an artillery, not mounted, and you'll notice that it doesn't mention anything about battle line for an infantry unit. The first battalion we'll talk about is the Galletian Sharpshooters. Now, this requires you to take 3 units of infantry. Now, while the benefit for this unit is based around the missile weapon attacks, it doesn't restrict you to only having shooting units in the battalion. So you could just take 1 shooting unit and 2 melee type units. Units within this battalion are not prevented for targeting enemy Galletian champions that are within 1 inch of an enemy battle line unit. You can snipe off those heroes until your heart's content with your long strikes, your bolt boys, your sentinels, your bow snakes, just to name a few. If you take this battalion, you will become a minimum 4-drop list and may lose the ability to choose who goes first or second in the first battle round. And that ultimately may lead you to lose a round of shooting when nothing is in range and being at risk of being double turned between turn 1 to turn 2. Next battalion is the Galletian Command, and it requires you to take 1 Galletian Champion as well as 1 mandatory infantry unit. No option to take additional infantry in this battalion. The infantry unit is now a sworn bodyguard to your Galletian Champion, and in the combat phase, when you pick a Galletian Champion from this battalion to fight for the first time in that phase, if the sworn bodyguard in this battalion is wholly within 6 inches of the Galletian Champion and it hasn't fought yet in that phase, the Galletian Champion and the sworn bodyguard can fight one after another in the order of your choice. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to keep the 2 units together at all times. It just means that they're not going to get the benefit if they're outside that 6 inches of the Galletian Champion. If you remember the 2 new heroic actions we just spoke about, this would be the way that you would get your Galletian Champions and your sworn bodyguards to fight in the hero phase. The 3rd core battalion available is the Galletian Veterans, and this is how we get access to the old rules called Bonds of Battle. This battalion requires you to have 2 infantry units and has the option of including 2 more within it. Essentially, the Bonds of Battle let you get more attacks into your enemy and work around some of your weapon range and base size restrictions that would normally stop you from maximizing your attacks while you're coherent. When a model from this battalion makes an attack with a melee weapon, you can target the enemy unit within 1 inch of another model from the attacking unit instead of using the weapon's range characteristic for this attack. If you do so, the attacking model must be within half an inch of another model from its own unit that is within half an inch of a target. As you can see here on the diagram, very simply, it means you can fight in 2 ranks. There are 6 grand strategies to choose from, with 3 being kept from Season 1 and 3 new grand strategies for Season 2, to no surprise, all focused on Galletian Champions. The existing grand strategies that crossed over are Tame the Land, Defend What Is Ours, and Take What's Theirs. Tame the Land, you complete this grand strategy if you control all the objectives on the battlefield that are wholly outside your territory. Defend What's Ours, you complete the grand strategy if there are no enemy units wholly within your territory. Take What's Theirs, you complete the grand strategy if there are more friendly units than enemy units wholly within enemy territory. The grand strategies we lost between Season 1 and Season 2 are No Place for the Weak, Demonstration of Strength, and Show of Dominance. While the 3 new grand strategies are Stake a Claim, Survivor's Instincts, and The Day Is Ours, which are all focused around Galletian Champions. Stake a Claim, you complete the grand strategy if 3 or more friendly Galletian champions are wholly within enemy territory. Survivor's Instincts, you complete this grand strategy if the model picked to be your general is a Galletian champion and the model is contesting an objective wholly outside your territory. And The Day Is Ours, you complete if there are more friendly Galletian champions from your starting army than Galletian champions from your opponent's starting army on the battlefield. Now, all of these grand strategies are in addition to the ones in your battle tome. Take What's Theirs or Defend What's Ours is likely to continue being the most popular universal grand strategies. Of the new grand strategies, I would say The Day Is Ours is likely my favorite. It just depends on how you're building your list. My Gits and my Cities armies, which are full of Galletian champions, would like this, and my Stormcast and my Daughters of Cain under the Sharpshooter Battalion would be confident in pulling down my opponent's champions. But when I do look at the new ones versus the old ones, the new ones just seem more restrictive than the old ones. There are 8 battle tactics to choose from in addition to the ones from your faction. 4 have crossed over from Season 1 and 4 are new. The ones you might recognize that have crossed over are Gaining Momentum, An Eye for an Eye, Desecrate Their Lands, and This One's Mine. The ones that we lost were Against the Odds, Barge Through Enemy Lines, Head to Head, and Out Muscle. They were lost to the new season, and I think you've probably shed a tear for losing Against the Odds, which was like the #1 picked battle tactic for turn 1. A Matter of Honor, Lead the Assault, United Defense, and Cunning Maneuver are the new battle tactics, which are all focused on Galletian champions. Surprise! A Matter of Honor makes you pick one enemy Galletian champion or sworn bodyguard unit on the battlefield. We just talked about that battalion. And is scored if the unit is destroyed during this turn by attacks made by a friendly Galletian champion or sworn bodyguard unit. Lead the Assault is scored if at least 2 of the objectives you control are in enemy territory and each of them are contested by a friendly Galletian champion. United Offense makes you pick one objective controlled by your opponent and you score it if you control that objective and 2 or more friendly Galletian champions are contesting that objective at the end of this turn. Cunning Maneuver makes you pick one friendly Galletian champion on the battlefield that is more than 3 inches from all enemy units and is scored at the end of the turn if that Galletian champion is more than 3 inches from enemy units and is contesting an objective you control that is outside your territory. Scoring battle tactics in this season just got a whole lot harder with the game's most popular turn 1 battle tactic Against the Odds no longer around, as well as the easy to score Barge Through Enemy Lines disappearing. If you run an army without Galletian champions like your Sons of Behemoth or another Monster Mash style army like Flesh Eater Court's Grizzlegore or maybe a Stonehorn kind of style Ogre Moor Tribes, you're going to have to rely on your Battle Tome book tactics if you want to score all 5 in a game. All 4 of the new battle tactics are achievable, but it's going to depend on your champion options. United Offense will be much easier to score in armies like Stormcast Eternals who can bring their heroes from reserve. Perhaps you can summon them too, or maybe you take Tunnel Master or another teleport spell like Hand of Gork, but ultimately look at these battle tactics, look at your army construction to see if you've got enough to score your battle tactics, or you may need to look at bringing more into your army so you're able to score all 8 as opposed to restricting it to just 4. Finally, there are 12 battle plans to choose from with Prize of Gallet, the Realmstone Cache, battle lines drawn, lurkers below in the presence of idols, and Nidus Path, all carrying over from the last Generals Handbook. There are 6 new battle plans in Only the Worthy, Path of a Champion, the Jaws of Gallet, Ours for the Taking, Twist and Turn, as well as Position over Power. If you need more convincing that you need Galletian Champions in your list, these new battle plans will only reinforce the benefits of taking them. Only the Worthy battles over 4 objectives with a minimum 18-inch starting distance between armies at deployment. Now, the special rule is Shrines of Conquest. While there are any Galletian champions within 6 inches of an objective, only Galletian champions can contest that objective. In addition, no more than 1 Galletian champion from the same army can contest the same objective at the same time. This has a very traditional way of scoring. You score 1 victory point if you control 1 objective. You score 1 victory point if you have 2 or more. You score 1 if you have more than your opponent. You also score 2 victory points if you complete your battle tactic. This would not be a surprise to anyone. You've been using this in most battle plans. Now, defending and deleting Galletian champions will be the key to success in this battle plan. There's still ways to win this battle plan if you don't have Galletian champions, but my Mega Gargants won't be capturing any objectives while these champions are within 6 inches of an objective. If you're going to put a champion on a center objective, you're probably going to need a survival plan with wards, passing off wounds to bodyguards, quality screens, but also prioritizing retreats and heroic recoveries. Path of a Champion battles over 4 objectives with a minimum of 18-inch distance between the armies at deployment, and the special rule is Leadership Forged in Battle. At the start of your hero phase, if any friendly Galletian champions are contesting an objective that is wholly outside your territory, you can pick 2 battle tactics to complete in that turn instead of 1. So you'll score 1 victory point if you control 1 objective, 1 for 2 or more, 1 if you control more than your opponent, and 2 for your battle tactics. There is a real potential for Galletian champion heavy armies with a high amount of good battle tactics at their disposal to get a solid victory point lead. Daughters of Cain are a great example of an army that is rich with battle-tone battle tactics and plenty of Galletian champions who could be racking up to 7 points a turn. Equally, with some solid strategic play, you'll be able to deny your opponent from scoring multiple battle tactics, and they'll burn through their selection as the game progresses. Jaws of Gallet battles over 4 objectives with a minimum 18-inch starting distance between the armies at deployment, and the special rule is swallowed by the caverns. At the start of each battle round after the first, so from turn 2 onwards, after priority has been determined, the player that takes second in the battle round can pick 1 objective on the battlefield to be swallowed by the caverns below. If they do so, that objective is removed from play. Now you're going to score again very traditionally. You score 1 for 1 objective, 1 for 2 or more, 1 for having more than your opponent, and 2 for your battle tactics that you score. This is our first new battle plan that isn't tied to Galletian champions. The objective removal is optional. It does say that you can remove it. It doesn't say you must remove it. Now, this becomes important as you would try to score your 1, 2, or more battle tactics as the game progresses. You don't directly score any additional victory points for removing the objective, so the power is yours. You'll also notice a few of these L-shaped deployment maps in the new season, which has the real potential of breaking up castle armies and benefiting those who can shift their power between the flanks. Ours for the Taking battles over 3 objectives with a minimum 11-inch distance between armies at deployment. The special rule is home objectives. Now, the objective on the border of each territory is the home objective for the relevant player. Now, you score 1 victory point if you control your home objective. You score 1 if you control the center objective. You score 2 victory points if you control the enemy home objective. You're also going to score an extra point if the center objective is controlled and contested by a friendly Galletian champion, as well as you score your 2 for completing your battle tactic that turn. Firstly, you're going to notice that this battle plan doesn't focus on scoring 1, 2, and more. Your opponent's objective is worth 2 to you, and the center objective, when it's contested by an objective, will get you additional victory points. Now, how much of your force do you leave to defend your home objective, scrum in the middle for the center, and go attack your opponent for their home objective is going to create a really interesting mix during the game. Unlike battle plans where your objective is in the middle of the deployment zone, this map is going to make it harder for you to project your power when you're defending your home base. So really, mobility is going to be key, or you just create a mosh pit in the center and you go from there. Twists and Turns battles over 5 objectives with a minimum 18-inch starting distance between armies at deployment, and the special rule is changing priorities. At the end of each player's turn, after any victory points have been scored, the player whose turn is taking place must roll a dice for each active objective they control. Now you get to add 1 to the dice roll if that objective is contested by a friendly Galletian champion. On a 1 to a 3, that objective becomes inactive. On a 4+, it remains active. So how do I turn them back on? Well, at the start of each player's hero phase, the player whose turn is taking place rolls a dice for each inactive objective they control. On a 1 to a 3, they remain inactive. Add 1 to the roll if that inactive objective is contested by a friendly Galletian champion. On a 4 up, it becomes active once more. So you just score 1 for holding 1, 1 for holding 2, 1 for holding more than your opponent. You're going to score 2 for your battle tactic. I think people are either going to love or hate this battle plan. The randomness of which objectives are active each turn are going to create a dynamic and unpredictable game, but it's also going to frustrate the hell out of players where part of the battlefield is grinding in a combat and the surrounding objectives go inactive. Now, having Galletian Champions is going to help you getting that +1 on the dice roll to keep it active, as well as reactivating objectives. Now, the thing I find most interesting about this battle plan is because you are rolling off in both players' turn to see if an objective is active or inactive, it's going to be really difficult for you to plan too far ahead because you might want to commit your force. You've got to plan to move towards a certain area and that objective goes inactive. So do you continue with your plans or do you switch and go for an active objective? Something for you to consider. The final of the new objectives is position over power, and you're battling over 4 objectives with a minimum 18-inch starting distance between the armies at deployment. The special rule is lost in the landslide, and objectives at the center of the narrow battlefield edge are the flank objectives. So the one on the far left, one on the far right, flank objectives. At the start of the 4th battle round, those flank objectives are removed and we go to 2 objectives, just 1 in your territory, 1 in mine. You score 1 if you hold 1 objective, 1 for having 2 or more, 1 for having more than your opponent. You score 1 if you control the flank objective by a Galletian champion, and you score 2 if you complete your battle tactic. You'll have 3 solid turns scoring 1, 2 or more using those flank objectives, which are going to be worth additional victory points if they're contested by the Galletian champion. Armies that can really make the most of this battle plan will likely have Galletian champions who can teleport, who can be summoned, or can come in from reserve. I'm thinking about my Stormcast. I could pop my Judicators down on one of the flank objectives, backed up by a champion who's holding the objective, and just pew from the center of the board to victory. My Dracothian Guard could be advancing up the board into your territory and putting pressure on yours. Maybe I've got something like the Nightflyer Cloak Artifact or Tunnel Master to pop up that champion on a flank objective. Or maybe I've got something like the Stubborn as a Rhinox to help protect my home objective. The Season 2 Battle Pack has the potential to bring back all the minor heroes that have been on holidays with some serious benefits in the battle plans, the new enhancements, the 4 additional battle tactics, and the various new abilities. With bounty hunters not crossing over into Season 2 and new battle tomes like Gloomspire Gits, Beasts of Chaos not being far away, I really think we can start to see the return of larger reinforced sized units. Things like Thralls, Zombies, Stabbers, Mortek Guard, Witch Elves, just to name a few. It could be tough to remove these champions when they're well protected. This all can quickly become undone if the Sharpshooter Battalion becomes popular in competitive list choices, and the stars predict, at least for the first couple of months, that it will be a popular list choice. You will be giving up the 1 drop, which is preferred for shooting armies, but it might be worth it so you don't waste a round of shooting if your opponent gives you the first turn because you're likely out of range, and it will allow you the ability to be able to remove Galletian champions from the battlefield, to deny victory points, and to interact, I guess, with the battle plans better. Long strikes with the Thunderbolt Volley Holy Command, Morathi giving bow snakes a hero face shooting, or units that can pick a point on the battlefield and do mortal wounds like the Celestant Prime or the Knight Judicator might become popular counters with the rise of the champion. Nighthaunt, Fire Slayers, Daughters of Cain, Slaves to Darkness, Tzeentch, and your Kharadron Overlords are a few armies that I think will take the lead early in the meta, though I do wonder how Sons of Behemat, your Beastclaw Raiders, and other monster armies are going to perform. Will Fire Slayers swap Lofnir Magmadroth armies in favor for foot troops and heroes? Perhaps this is the time for the Greyfared and its boost to those non-mounted heroes. And with the rise of shooting, will Idoneth Deepkin keep these types of shooting armies honest and gatekeep them from the top armies? What about the Cruel Boys that can block line of sight unless you're within 12 inches? I don't know how this season's going to turn out after the last one, considering the last Generals Handbook was all about infantry and Galletian veterans, but the Bounty Hunter Battalion kept that meta at bay and we never actually saw the rise of infantry. So I wonder, will sharpshooters do the same thing? Will it be as hard as bounty hunters, or will you find a scissor paper rock dynamic? At the end of this video, I want you to look at your Galletian champion options and see how deep you can play into these rules. The Contorted Epitome with its 2-up mortal wound save and 8 wounds, I think is going to be a hot pick. The Warsong Revenant is going to be another solid choice. I want you to let me know in the comment section who are your standout champions in your faction. Again, I think we're only scratching the surface with some of the names that I've thrown out. To me, this feels different, and I think there's enough incentives for me to revisit my list, include and build around the new combinations with my Galletian champions. My Sons of Behemat army is going to have to play around the rules, and I'm going to have to think very deeply. If I do run with Gargants in the season, how do I work around Galletian champions? How do I use their 3-inch attacks to delete heroes and reach over the troops? How do I use their bodies and how do I use their abilities to stop the scoring shenanigans? While my Gits are going to have to find some durability if I want to survive the sharpshooters. And my Stormcaster, my Daughters of Cain are probably going to have a field day with all the new tools that are at my disposal. But that's enough about me. I would love to hear from you in the comment section. What do you think of the new rules? Who are going to be your Galletian champions? What are the additional artifacts and enhancements that you like, and how are you starting to think about it? Do let me know in the comment section how you're going to take advantage of this. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double one on a spellcast.